I'm here with Sue Day. She's one of our committed partners. Sue, could you introduce yourself and tell us why you decided to take part in writing a letter to your younger self?
Sure. I love the work that Find the ADHD Girls is doing. I'm an ADHD coach myself. I was diagnosed at 16, a very long time ago. I never paid attention to my ADHD until I was about 50. I started realizing the harm of ignoring the symptoms and the harm caused by society. It's just ADHD, you're fine, or whatever people tend to say about ADHD. And at 50, I started noticing that harm for myself, and it just became very important to me to start helping folks not go through what I went through. That's a big part of why I wrote the letter.
Yeah, and what I guess you're one of the people that I've interviewed now that learned comparatively young that you learned about ADHD, but a woman I talked to yesterday also got diagnosed in high school, and she said that people falsely think that made a huge difference. And what we talked about then is just knowing is not enough.
Yeah,
Well,
it
but she
does
was
make a
saying for her,
difference.
it did help because she was able to develop some strategies that helped her, but she didn't get all the other things that we're learning are helpful once you have a diagnosis. What was your experience? Did having a diagnosis help in any way in these intervening years?
I think it did in some ways. I think the biggest way was in mindset, right? So I knew that I wasn't broken. I knew that my brain was different, even though I still encountered the same, like, ADHD doesn't exist. Oh, no, you couldn't possibly have ADHD because you can read a book. Oh, you don't have ADHD, you're just lazy. The same kinds of repeated experiences that people who don't have ADHD or have not been diagnosed with ADHD experience. I at least had a label and that ability to change my perception on what people were saying to me a little bit.
So you're saying
So
even after your diagnosis, people continued to say things to you? Because that's what struck me in your letter is how, you cited all the different report cards you had and how you were told repeatedly that you weren't trying hard enough and that if you paid attention more and tried harder, you'd do well. And I was just amazed at how you hung on to your self-esteem and saying, I want to, you were advising yourself as a little girl that you wanted to stay your unique self and not be destroyed by these comments people were saying to you. But there in the 10th grade, a teacher told you had a great analytic mind. And I know people, when they have something hurtful said to them, they hang on to that. Did you hang on to that?
did. One of the things that they are noticing, or what I'm seeing is a trend in people who are successful with ADHD, regardless of whether or not they got diagnosed, is having supportive people in their lives and supportive comments, even one person saying one positive thing.
Yes, yes.
I was very lucky to have my grandmother, who, though also did not accept the ADHD diagnosis, was still my top fan, my number one fan, and I could do no wrong. But she also pushed me, right, to do well. I was so lucky in having that. And yes, I think that the complimenting of the mind along next to criticism is a double-edged sword, right? You're so smart. Why aren't you doing this? It feels like most of the judgments made against us ADHDers are moral judgments. I know you can do it, but you refuse to. And I
That
think
you've done it
that,
sometimes, so you can do it all the time.
yeah, and I think that lays an extra jab into the traumas. Like you're a bad person because you're not doing what you're capable of.
Yes, and it's your choice. It's your choice that you're
Yes.
not doing it. We want to do well too. We don't understand why we're not doing well all the time. Yeah, I just was so impressed with your resilience through all of that. And that you, I don't know, yeah, I guess that's what really came across.
Yeah, yeah. I think again, I'm really lucky that I had a supportive at least a supportive person in my life. And I also came from a family that wasn't particularly traditional. Being weird was okay in my family. I am the weirdest and definitely judged for that, but not as much as I think that can happen in other families and other settings.
And so
So
you didn't
really
feel
helpful.
like you were pushed into a mold as much as some children might feel in their family, that there's only one way to be in this family and you're not being that way.
I still felt a huge pressure to succeed in traditional ways.
Mhm.
So even though I dropped out of high school, I felt a huge pressure to go to college on time. Even though it took me a
Oh.
long time to finish college, I felt a huge pressure to succeed in traditional roles once I did.
Huh. As you say that, I'm thinking about myself, and I also know about my ADD as long as you have, but I started when I was 49. I grew up with structure, which was helpful, but without medication. And then other people today, I feel, grow up with medication without the structure. But what you're describing, I was like, I knew my family expected me to do well in school and go to college, but I guess I didn't look on that as punitive, more like what you're saying. I thought it was helpful. So I guess it depends how it gets imposed.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I was required, I think the expectations for success were less helpful than the expectations of just the understanding that people aren't all the same. And so that was the helpful part. And when I was expected to go to college, I was expected to go to I wanted to go to a alternative college, but I
Oh,
was not allowed to go to an alternative college. I was expected to go right back into sort of the normal way of
I
things.
see. You had some guidelines, but they, at some point, they felt a bridge too far to cross or something.
Yeah, I think so. I think most of the harm, though, came because that was believing in me still. That was still that maybe that double-edged sword of a compliment. That was believing in you can do this. And that
Uh-huh.
felt that was good, but then there always came the but why don't you? So I think that was yeah, I think it was helpful in a way, but then there was always the but why don't you that was so harmful. I'm firmly in the Gen X generation where the 70s kids were I had no structure. I was like, you do whatever you want until I got to be an adult and they were like, why aren't you doing that? It is a interesting the differences in what helps people is I think it really speaks to how unique we all are.
Yeah. What I hear you saying too is sometimes we're our own worst critics.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would guess that my parents would tell me they never thought half of the things that I thought they said that I thought they thought about me.
Our perceptions of how other people are perceiving us are probably they're wrong and they're more
Yes.
judgmental than those people ever thought.
Yeah. I heard somebody a long time ago say we are our own most toxic bosses when they were talking about entrepreneurship. We leave our workplaces that we say are toxic workplaces to go into entrepreneurship, and then we become our most toxic boss. And I think that's all about we heard 20,000 more negative things about ourselves by the time we were 7. And boy, do we internalize that.
Oh, yes. In the book I wrote, I had met a man and he came to the meeting and said that he worked for the worst boss imaginable. His boss was always criticizing him. And then he said, I'm self-employed.
Absolutely. So rough on ourselves.
So when you sit down to write the letter, what was your process for writing the letter? Did it just flow out of you? How did you get to write what you wrote?
I seem to have become a writer a little bit by mistake over the past couple of years as I move into my entrepreneurship and my coaching and I wrote a book and I've been told that my style of writing is I'm a pantser, which means I write from the seat of my pants. And a good amount of the stuff that I write is what I fondly call brain vomit. It just poof, and it all is there. And then I have to go back and edit it. And so that's pretty much how I did it. So I've been writing about my life as an ADHDer for a really long time. because I have been blogging for a long time about life as an ADHD. So all of that information was right in my head. And when I was cleaning out my mom's file drawers and I found my old report cards, that
Yes,
was just like frosting on the
a
cake, like,
gold mine.
oh, uh-huh. Because you just hear over and over again how people are treated in school, even now, even with a diagnosis, looking back 40 years ago, and it's the same story. And it's a little sad how little
Yeah,
has changed there.
as you say that, I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't it be wonderful if we taught our children when the teacher says, if you only tried harder, and they would say back, if you tell me to try harder, it just turns my brain off. If they
Yeah, it
could
would
speak
be.
up for
Mhm.
themselves saying, please encourage me, but don't tell me to try harder.
Yeah. I remember once when my mom was criticizing me about something, and I just turned to her and I was like, do you think I want this to be like this? Do you
Ah,
think that this is what I want? And it stopped her in her tracks. And
mm,
she never criticized me about that thing again.
huh.
So I think they're teaching self-advocacy is so important and helping us to even understand that we're not bad, that we don't want all this stuff that people are saying we want to behave this way. It's not true. And
Mm,
we need to remember to teach our kids that even though they're going to hear that over and over again in their life, it's not true. We know they don't want to
uh-huh.
fail in school. We know they don't want to be obstructive in class. And
Just to think that you're on the child's side and helping them to learn to advocate for themselves, that in itself would be a huge step forward. Did you think writing the letter helped you in any way? Now, you're like me. You've known about your ADHD for a long time, and I thought it, but it still was very hard emotionally for me to write the letter. And what I described to others, that I think we put a lid on the hurt. And going back to write the letter, we confront some of that hurt all over again.
yeah, it was really hard. I'm little teary just talking to you, even after I've written the letter and read it several times and done all of that. And yeah, those little hurts don't just go away. You process them, you learn how to deal with them, you learn different perspectives, but there's still hurts, there's still pain. And even as somebody who's been diagnosed for a long time and as a D coach who works really firmly in strengths, I think it's important to take a step back and look at the hurt every now and then, look at the pain for both for my clients and for myself, just to, yeah, that was hard. It was really hard. And for my advocacy, right? So it's really important for me to remember how hard that was. And so, yes, very hard still to go back and relive those times, to think about all the harm I caused because of my unchecked ADHD. All the harm I could have caused is even worse. But it helps me redouble my resolve of let's catch them early. Let's help them.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've read the study from earlier this year that ADHD can take up to 10 years off of a woman's life. I said, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling that this is a well documented occurrence and it is still so untreated.
I think it's because we haven't gotten the idea out that it's how significant a disorder it can be. I think there's still that image that it's just a lot of energy, misplaced energy being disruptive. But when we learn how it impacts almost every area of your life and it's impacting your self-esteem and your self-confidence, it's impacting the trajectory you're taking through your life because you don't even assess yourself properly, saying I'm capable. You might be too often saying I'm not capable. You're confining you're limiting yourself sometimes. All those things happen from ADHD. So part of it is saying early diagnosis, but the other part is saying this is significant and that it should be diagnosed in families because it's genetic.
I love seeing the trend of when a kid is diagnosed. Okay, let's look at the parents now too
Yes.
and encourage that. So I love that because what else is true about being undiagnosed, especially as it being an undiagnosed adult with an ADHD kid? It's so hard to parent. Being a parent It's all about consistency and emotional regulation and emotional intelligence, all this stuff that we are not prepared to do. So important to diagnose the parents too.
Yeah, the parent consistency, we went for therapy and I was told to develop a behavior modification program, which I did, and I was doing it perfectly. And then one morning I woke up and forgot about it. And when I went back to the therapist, he asked about it, and I had no idea what he was talking about. It wasn't till I got diagnosed that I could work on doing something simpler, much simpler, of course, and sticking with it.
I got a new database. I can keep track of everything
Oh,
in
yeah,
55 different ways.
can go deep into things and make them complicated.
Yes.
Did you have any hopes for your letter when you wrote it?
Yes, I absolutely am. And I've already heard from a few folks how impactful it was. I think one of the best things we can do as diagnosed ADHD is to talk about how impactful having ADHD has been to our lives. A diagnosis is just one piece of the
The
puzzle.
start. It's a start.
Yeah, it's just the start. Meds are just one piece of the puzzle. They don't work for everybody and they don't work consistently throughout our lives. So there's just one piece of the puzzle. It's so important to really look at ADHD as holistically. And I think that's what sharing our stories helps people do is to really see, wow, this impacted everything from your story of socially unacceptable behaviors, right? Eating the gum off the sidewalk is like, how it's so brave of you. Thank you for sharing that. And also, I could feel it in your words. You still live with that. And it's so hard to understand, like, so just the shame that we live with and opening that up for other folks is
Mhm.
not easy for me to say I could have really harmed people in my life with my behavior.
Yes.
But it's so important to be open about it and to share, like, you know what? We're not perfect. Our society, I personally think that we're the ones who are going to save the world, but that our weird brains are the ones that are programmed to make really positive change in the world. But even without that, it's just so important for people to understand just how hard it is and to let go of that shame of I'm a bad person because things are hard. It's not shameful. It's our society doesn't make room for us. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I drew a diagram of a circle and a square. And if the circle is small, the square doesn't fit in it. But if the circle gets bigger, meaning it gets more inclusive, it can include the square. So
Mm,
that is what I'm hoping as we work. The square learns to make its edges a little less pointed. That's us learning to fit in a little better. And sometimes taking medication helps us fit in better, but it's also the circle learning to be more inclusive and not so judgmental. So that's the image I'm thinking going forward is we should change some, but the change needs to come from them too.
yes, growth on all sides. I love that image. That's a great metaphor because we're always talking about putting a square peg in a round hole. It does fit if the hole's big enough, and it
Huh.
doesn't hurt the circle if the square's edges are a little softened.
Is there any particular advice you would like to leave for girls growing up with ADHD today?
I think for girls and their parents, you're not broken. Girls get told, especially girls, get told they are too much and not enough every area of life. And then you add ADHD on top of that, where it's just like another, like, absolutely, you're too much and not enough situation. And girls just have it so much worse.
Internalize it.
Yeah. And we really internalize it. We can never do anything. It's just so accept, try to learn that you're good enough and you're not too much. And for parents, advocate for them and try and ditch those gender specific roles as
Uh-huh.
much as possible. Let the girls be who they are and not girls as
Right.
in traditional senses. Let us be who we need to be and expect growth, but don't expect us to change who we are.
Yeah, so that I think that's a message I'm hearing from other women I'm interviewing is that you're unique and you need to accept, strengthen that uniqueness, not
Mm.
put a lid on it, but be who you are. Be willing to be who you are.
Yeah. And then everything I tell everybody who I talk to about ADHD is we have amazing brains. We have brains that think outside the box. We're creative. We're funny. There's just so much great stuff about our brains. So let's learn about our strengths and really lean into them because that's where we're going to thrive.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you, Sue. Thank you for your letter. I hope it inspires lots of people to
Yeah,
that their daughters with ADHD can be awesome. They just need that person to believe in them.
exactly. And thank you so much for all the work you do. It's so powerful.